They're motivated by legacy, and they measure themselves by how well they're doing against their numbers. You can't teach that, right? It's innate. Some people have that extra gear or two, and others just don't. And, this is the frustration for most companies. They have all these interviews, one-dimensional interviews or group interviews, right? They look the part, they say the right things, and then after they're hired, you're like, where's the person that was in the interview?
Welcome to the Love Your Brand podcast. If you're looking for real conversations with real people, you're the right place. Let's go!
All right, let's go. Welcome to the Love Your Brand show. Today we are blessed and impressed to have Mr. John Pyke back on the show.
Welcome back, John. Oh, let me get some cheering.
Woo!
In the house.
As promised, we had him on. We talked about self-awareness, the self-assessment test, just the awesome stuff that John brings to the table. And we promised that we were actually going to have it completed on a tiny level with a few select members of our team. So today, we're actually going to get the enjoyment of having Mr. John Pyke review those results in hopes that you can gather a little more insight into how impactful this is going to be for your organization and game changing. You're talking about moving the needle. I'm talking about sewing a whole sweater. Like, this is for real.
Sewing the whole sweater.
So let's go. John, welcome, brother. Thank you for coming back.
My pleasure.
We love it.
Glad to be here.
We had, I think it was right around Christmas time, the end of 2024, that we had John. John drove down. We had the podcast, so check out the show notes. If you did not watch the first one, it's about an hour-long conversation with John. It just kind of blew our minds with these assessments. I think all of us over time, we've done assessments, whether on a personal level or on a professional level within the organizations. They're always really good to see it. But John, it was so much more than like just a DISC profile that we did. And so I don't know how many of our listeners have just done DISC. Personally, that's all I'd done in the past. And what you did, taking it a little bit further, I don't know if we're going to be embarrassed to have you kind of walk through, today, me and Jason, kind of the strength plan you put together for that. But it was just very eye-opening. And for us to have team members in there, because a lot of times I think you have a lot of people that are on the wrong seat in the bus with the organization. And so maybe they got put into that, or, somebody leaves an organization, this person migrates into that responsibility, and it's just not the right fit. And so when you came in and spent some time with our team, it kind of opened up the eyes of everybody, like, oh my goodness, this is how we're wired. This is how I operate. I'm high risk. I'm low risk. And then it starts to see from a team approach how we can collaborate and be better to move the needle on our organization.
And something that was just so impactful, John, is, everybody's somewhat familiar with love languages of individuals. And being in a position sometimes where you're talking to a group, then knowing in each individual, they interpret and their communication style is different. So that is a game changer for organizations. Now you have a lot of CEOs that talk one way, right? They're a coach. 100%. Boom, 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 boom. Where they may be missing 50% of their audience, right?
No question. Yeah, like DISC or any type of personality instrument is very, very effective for understanding the differences between communication styles. I would say it's probably the least important of the three assessments that we're going to cover today. But overall, success in everything that you do starts with the inner game, knowing who you are, what you do best, and then leveraging what you know about yourself so that you can achieve the most, right? So St. Francis of Assisi put it best. He said, if you don't understand yourself, how can you understand someone else? The first level is self-awareness of your own, as a person, and then an awareness of the members on your team. What are their styles? Why do they show up to work every day? What are they motivated by? And I think, the audience is going to be very intrigued when we dig into some of the motivators or what people value, why they show up to work, and how that can really impact their level of engagement or lack of it, whether or not they want to stay or whether or not they're looking to go, whether they have one foot out the door. And then, the third piece of the puzzle is talent. These are things that you cannot learn. All right. It's not based on experience or skill. It's, you either have it or you don't. McKinsey and Company had a research study. They said that a top performer compared to an average performer can be as high as 8 times more productive.
Wow.
8 times bigger results if you have someone that has the right talent. And so, we see that in sales because 20% of the salespeople, consistently deliver 80% of the total sales revenue. So yeah, it's, why don't we kind of dig into taking a look at the diversity of your personality scores as it relates to the DISC profile.
Absolutely, John. And just something revolutionary, or maybe not revolutionary, but very, very insightful. When you honed in on the self-awareness part, I immediately dug into the self-awareness leader, right? Then that took me down a few different rabbit holes. Well, your partners need to be self-aware, right? Employees, contractors, whatever your affiliation of your tribe, right? Then that took me down the rabbit hole, and I said, wow, it's the self-aware brand that's going to win at the end. The self-aware brand is the holistic view of the organization, the company, what the customers are saying, what, HR is saying to potential talent, right? The talent people, what are they saying? What's their initial feel from what they see? And I've kind of just snowballed it into the self-aware brand. That kind of helped me wrap my head around it and help tie in everything, the brand, the marketing aspect, the talent aspect, the culture piece. I truly think they're all one now, and they all need to be almost in a harmony, right?
That's a brilliant observation. There are so few companies that have that type of alignment, but when you do, it's incredibly powerful.
Awesome. All right. So, Jay Hill, you want to start with maybe kind of the overview profile?
John, John, where do you want us to start? So you let us through this.
The red graph first, the DISC profile, which is the dominance one.
All right, so we're going to get crazy. We're going to crazy technical, and we're going to share a screen here.
Uh-oh.
And so for those of you that are not familiar with the DISC profile, basically there are 4 quadrants. Every human being demonstrates characteristics or traits of all 4 dimensions, but the key is in varying degrees of intensity. So typically, the higher the score in a specific dimension, the more likely we are going to experience personality traits or behavioral traits or characteristics in that specific area. So D stands for dominance or decisiveness. This really has to do with how competitive you are, your sense of urgency, the pace that you have, how forceful you are, how impatient you are versus patient. And so we see that senior executives, entrepreneurs are typically people that have a high to really extreme dominance score, so the D. So that's certainly the case with Jason. He's almost 70. And then you can see that there's quite a difference here. You've got 2 members that are really, really low, right? And then you have a couple who are kind of moderate, and then the person in the middle, SW, is also really high as well. So when it comes to self-awareness, it's really important to understand that at work, Jason could be too forceful if he just operates on automatic pilot, what I call, kind of in his comfort zone, who he is at home, because it's too much energy, it's too much passion, it's too much competitiveness, if you will, or a driving force. So he appropriately, you can see the second number underneath his initials, JR. 67 is who he is at home or in a social setting, and 42 is what he is at work. So the key is that most people don't even realize that they're making adjustments from who they are, right? What their comfort zone is and who the real them is. So we see that, Jason makes the decision when as soon as he comes to work, he realizes, hey, I can stay at 67 when it comes to tasks and getting things done. But when I'm interacting with people, I need to lower that because 90% of the world's population are lower Ds, and it can be too strong, too much force.
Say that again, John. Did you say 90% of people are lower Ds?
90% of the world's population are low Ds. It's the rarest personality style. And it's also the one that, most executives climb through the organization pretty quickly because they have that competitiveness. They have that extra gear or two in terms of their drive and wanting to get things done.
Totally.
So
can I interrupt real quick and ask a question? So for people that are watching, I'm JH. I'm number 2 here. So my D is very low. But you bring up competitiveness. I am like off the charts competitive.
Right.
You put me in any sport. I mean, I try to tone it down, but I just can't. And so can you comment on that with the competitiveness or lack of?
So, another way to look at this is energy, right? So when I take a look at the two of you, Jonathan, you are a little bit more subdued, a little bit more even keeled, right? You're a little bit more mellow, where Jason is quite a bit more intense. So it doesn't mean that if you have a D score, that you can't be competitive, right? In terms of wanting to always win or hating to lose. But it's just that how you show up is very, very different in that, right?
Okay.
So, a good example would be this. I was playing pickup basketball at the Y with my son, who's now a Division I basketball athlete. And it's like, I'm a 99 on the D score. And so I'm doing everything and I'm giving 100%. And my son's just kind of, joking around. And he's like, Dad, chill. This is the YMCA. And I'm like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? I want to win this game. Right. And so, my urgency and his urgency and competitive or drive, to be the best and to be number one was just like off the chain. So, so Jason's going to show up a lot more intense. He's like, let's go. And you're going to be more methodical. You are going to be sometimes the voice of reason to slow Jason down. So that's why it's really ideal that you have such a contrast, because Jason wants to get results yesterday, right? He's the visionary. He wants to move forward very quickly, but he also needs someone to kind of rein him in. And we'll also get to another personality style here in a minute, the S and the C score, and how that really impacts the experience that everybody else in the company has, right? So, so this is insightful. It really helps you to know, hey, I'm really driving this thing forward, have a high sense of urgency, want to get things done. And so that's an area of opportunity for a significant amount of conflict if you don't manage it correctly.
Yeah. And I think what I want to add here is, like in the past, I would take an assessment like this just for me individually. And I would, with other friends or family members, and there was a lot of negativity. Like I remember people that would say a D, dominant personality type, is, they were very threatened by it, or they didn't like it, or this person was too strong and this and that. And that was always a conversation that was going around. Or the S or the C were too passive and they weren't this. It was like from a negative perspective. And I think how my eyes were kind of opened here when you came in and worked with our team was seeing from a team approach, exactly how you just kind of honed in on me and Jason there, to where, yeah, Jason's the visionary. Yeah, he is, I wanted results yesterday kind of a thing. But when you bring the right people in and how they complement one another so well, it changes everything. And so you couldn't have a team of 5 Ds, with the exact same thing. I mean, what in the world? I couldn't imagine an organization like that. Or five S's, they would get nothing done, kind of a thing. Absolutely. So it was so insightful for us to see you, to where you affirmed everybody, to where, this is who we are. This is how we were wired. God made us a certain way. Now there's things in life shift that happened that can shift and mold, and we start operating. But yeah, I just wanted to comment on that because it opened everybody's eyes just seeing that and how well we work together as a team with our different styles.
So you raise an incredibly important point because most teams go through 4 stages. Okay. The initial stage is forming, or first of all, getting together, right? And there's a mixture of emotions, excitement, a little bit of nervousness. Will I be accepted? Are people going to trust? Are they going to be respectful, etc.? The next one is storming, right? That's where the contrast takes place. Then that is where really conflict occurs, right? Because you're trying to feel each other out a little bit and try to understand where each other's coming from and yet still be respectful of the contributions that they bring. And then the third stage is you start to develop some standards, some norms, right? Of how to best interact with each other without being judgmental or threatening somebody else or feeling intimidated, etc. And then the fourth and final, the highest level is performing. Well, sadly, most teams get stuck in that storming conflict area or norming, and they don't really work together as a united, cohesive team where there's psychological safety, where there's a lot of trust, and where people feel open to be able to communicate. So it was really interesting. I facilitated a global sales meeting, meeting. People came from all over the world. In 4 years, they had never been together face to face. And there was a lot of uneasiness, even though they'd been on Zooms together and been on phone calls together. There was a lot of uneasiness. And I said, hey, you need to play all out. In order for us to get the best outcomes at the end of this conference, everybody needs to be completely transparent and forget about, right, feeling that you're taking a risk. And so at the end, because they decided to play full out, they said, hey, there were 2 people actually that gave feedback. They got teary-eyed and they said, this is the best sales meeting I've ever attended in my entire life. And so the human tendency is we don't like conflict. And so instead of putting ourselves out there and being transparent, we withhold. And so 70% of leaders would rather brush something under the carpet than have a hard conversation with one of their followers. 70%.
Wow.
67% of the followers are the same way. They don't want to come to their leader. They don't want to come to their manager and share their perspective and share their true feelings about something. So you have to create a safe environment where people feel valued. And the single most effective way that you do that is by understanding the uniqueness and the nuances of who everyone is, why they are the way that they are, and how you are going to continue to experience them every day that they show up. Let's move to the I for the sake of time.
You got it.
So the I has to do with extroversion, how expressive, how outgoing, how friendly, how social. So the people that are kind of the last 3 to the right, JS, SN, and MK, are what you call an ambivert. They're friendly and social, but they also like their alone time. So when they get home, they've used up their quota of words for the day. They just kind of want to be by themselves. Whereas, the 2 of you, it's like the party continues after hours. You're continuing to be extroverted. You're continuing to be very expressive and outgoing. Okay. So, and you take a look at SW. My experience is that more introverted, withdrawn individuals are rarely engaged or asked for their opinion. They're reluctant to share their opinion in the first place. They typically think about things longer, and sometimes they have the biggest revelations and best ideas, but you have to be intentional as a leader in asking for them to contribute, because everybody else a lot of other people will steal the show. They're going to take, 80, 60, 70, 80% of the actual, verbal communication time. So, again, as a leader, it really is critical that you understand your people, what their safety, and comfort zone is, and, be able to just say, hey, we haven't heard from you for a while. What do you think about this subject? Right. And they actually will appreciate being asked.
I kind of see that as well as, if sometimes they tend to want to be involved in a lot of stuff as well, to get that nurturing, right? as well on the flip side. But you're absolutely right to identify that and to keep them involved in areas that they're passionate about. I can see that really, nurturing that relationship.
Now you can see that both Jason and Jonathan, the first two scores on the left, you see their natural style is a 99, is a pure extrovert, and then Jason lowers to 67. Jonathan's at 81, he lowers to 60.
Oh.
So both of you have learned over time that it is much more effective to moderate and facilitate conversations versus dominating them. We've all been in the company of people that just prattle on without ever stopping to take a breath, and it's annoying, right? It's off-putting. So this is more of the collaborative, but again, that's the importance of self-awareness. 91% of the world's work population have very low self-insight and self-knowledge around how they communicate, what's important to them. It's tragic. And what we know from research is the highest performers, the elite 9% that continually achieve all their performance objectives, they are the ones with the highest level of self-awareness. So because I have an advanced understanding of who I am, my strengths, my communication style, what it is that's important to me, they select a job, a career, a position that's really tightly aligned with what they naturally do well. So that's why self-awareness is so important.
Wow.
Yep. And then just getting on this whole idea of trust, where you're building an environment where feedback is the norm, where openness and transparency is the norm. We have more data now around things like trust. The difference between if you're working on a high trust team, and it typically will translate into exceptional performance. Let me just mention a few of the benefits. 74% less stress, 106% more energy, 50% higher performance. It even affects people's physiology or how often they're sick because of the amount of stress.
Wow.
Right? So 13% fewer sick days, 76% more engagement. We are at an all-time low for employee engagements, the worst in 11 years. It's only 31%. And part of the reason for that is we're not creating the ideal work environment for the employee. In other words, who are they? What's their style? How do I create the most positive, affirming work environment to encourage them and inspire them? And then also knowing their talents. What do they do that's really, they're in the zone, they're in their element. And again, we know from research, only 11% of the population spends most of their time in their area of strength. So why don't we move on to the S and just kind of keep rolling here.
Did you say 11%?
11% of the work population, according to Gallup, spend most of their time in their area of strength. That's 89% are doing things, that drain you, where you are not affirmed, you are not fulfilled, you are not working in your area of strength.
Now, what do you account that as, John? Just the fact that, self-awareness is just not taken seriously within organizations?
I would say, we touched on this in the first podcast, but you know what? It stems back to our educational system. It's not broken. I used to think it was broken. It's not. It's designed exactly the way that they want it to be designed, which is fatally flawed. So if you think about the fact, I'm not sure if I mentioned this in the first podcast, I travel all over the world and I've spoken to hundreds of thousands of people. I have had 2 people get the right answer on what the word education actually means. When you think about it, next to our houses, right, and our homes, we spend the most amount of money in investment in terms of our education. High school, college, post-grad, etc. The word education comes from the Latin educare, which means to bring up or to bring out. Education in its beginning, in its inception, was about harnessing a person's inner potential that they didn't know exists. In other words, bringing it to their awareness so that they can leverage the best of who they are. Is that powerful or what? Most of our education is about putting something in versus empowering the person and helping them understand and giving them insight into where their strengths are. So that's really the essence of the problem. Our educational system does not prepare people for the workforce. 80% of the people that take a job has nothing to do with what they took in college, right? 80% of the people finish with a job that had nothing to do with the job that they took when they first started their career. It's poor. And so what happens is when you as an organization have a system to be able to elevate a person's self-awareness and then invest in them and pour into them and say, Jason, and we'll get to this, your ability to connect and relate and develop trust and rapport people, and Jonathan too, are conservatively in the top 1% of the highest performers in the world. That is a game changer in every aspect, because being equipped with this information, you know more about the candidate and potential hire or the current employee than they know about themselves. And so the camaraderie and the synergy and the unity and the cohesiveness that comes together is off the chain. Let me give you one quick example. Man, I get so fired up and passionate about this.
Nice.
Love it, John.
My son decided to join a Division I basketball team this year that had a failing record, all right? Only a 20% win rate. And he could have gone to at least 4 schools that were in March Madness, right? They were interested. We're going to give him a scholarship. And we made the decision, the best way that you improve is to have playing time. And we knew going to this other school, he would start. So he got a lot of minutes, did incredibly well. Last tournament of the year, he's picked as one of the top 5 best performers, okay? So what I want to share, though, is I did 5 different team building sessions using the assessments as the platform, as the foundation, and self-awareness. Now, I'm not claiming credit for all of this transformation, but the coach is an absolute staunch believer in the fact that unity, cohesiveness, camaraderie, the ability for each of the players to trust not only each other, but also the coaches, and building a strong relationship is the key to success. Talent is talent. Everybody's got talent. It's how well you play together. So we were able to triple their success rate, their wins in conference. And also they had their most successful season in the history of the school. What changed? The leadership changed, and the recognition that, and again, Jordan's agent, who used to work and be on staff for the Milwaukee Bucks when they won the NBA championship, I asked him a question. How much do you attribute your success in winning the championship to talent, and how much do you attribute to camaraderie and the players playing together and trusting each other? He said 70% trust and relationship and 30% talent. I submit to you, every organization has a massive opportunity, knowing that only 11% of the world's population spends most of their time in their strength, and only 9% even have a high degree of awareness of what their strengths actually are.
Wow.
It is powerful in terms of the outcomes and the return on investment.
Unbelievable.
Powerful.
Unbelievable. It makes me think of that quote, there's no I in team.
Their ability to understand themselves and to respect and appreciate the styles and understand the styles of everybody else and how to best, modify and adjust and work together cohesively. So the S stands for stabilizing. It's stability and security. Okay. So what's interesting, what I typically find is most CEOs, most entrepreneurs are low S's. And it's actually a very good thing. It drives everybody else in the company crazy, but it's a good thing. And here's the reason why. They are typically the ones that are early adopters, that are embracing ideas and trying to move the company forward. They'll go to a conference, they'll go to a mastermind, a coaching session. They'll learn something new, something different from their peers, maybe in a different industry either, and how that can apply to elevating their effectiveness. They come back all jazzed up. But the problem is that 50% of the world's population are risk averse. One of my clients that I mentioned, this global sales team, 75% of the average score of the S is 75%. So stability and security, slow to adopt change. Same thing with General Motors. They miss fuel efficient cars by 2 decades. It's like trying to turn the Titanic, right? So the thing is about most leaders, executives, owners, they're low on the S. It's a good thing that it is, because they're always pushing the company, trying to innovate and push the company forward. However, this is where Jonathan really comes into play and really helps to balance that and temper that enthusiasm and passion and drive to make change by being a little bit more, okay, I hear what you're saying, but have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? Do we really want to do this now? And it's good to have each other as a sounding board for Jason, who's the visionary and wants to implement. And then Jonathan, who's like, okay, here's where I have some concerns. And so you're able to vet that out with each other before you announce what you're going to be doing to the other people on your team. Okay. And you guys are smiling and nodding because, you have these conversations all the time. But that's why.
Yeah, John, it's like you're reading our mail. I mean, seriously, dude.
Yeah, it's absolutely right. I did another facilitation about a month ago, the 28 top leaders in the team. And I basically showed everybody the profile, right, of the CEO. And it was like an unbelievable revelations. Everyone's laughing. Everyone's like, because they know that that's exactly what happens. And his S score was probably about 15. So he's like a 99D. Talk about like wanting to get things done, and wanting to bring, the organization with him, but he's trying to drag them with him kind of thing, because they need more time, right, to think about it and to mull it over and just, whereas the senior executive is like, he's already made up his mind. He's already made the decision. This is what we need to do, why we need to do it. He's had the advance notice, of what we're going to do. So yeah, so you're exactly right. This is definitely a very important one. Somebody like JS really they're a laggard, not, they're at the bottom, the S curve. You've got early adopters and then you've got laggards at the end. That person's a laggard. So how do you bring that person on board? Most of the time, my experience is if the change is something that they perceive is going to be helpful, not just change for change's sake, but you need to kind of educate them and, talk it through with them in order for them to kind of embrace it. So that's definitely a big one, definitely a very important one. Why don't we go to the S for the sake of time, because we've got 2 other assessments to move through. Okay, so the C, this has to do with us being a perfectionist, being thorough, precise, detailed. The thing that they fear the most is making a mistake. So in addition to Jason having a high degree of urgency.
This surprised me. This one surprised me. I thought maybe there was a little issue because I am a perfectionist in some areas. Maybe that's it. It's just in some areas.
Right.
Maybe not in the majority of areas.
So let's take the totality of this assessment. He has a high degree of urgency and competitiveness to move things forward and to get things done. He's very expressive and verbal, so communicates freely to all. He embraces change very quickly and tries to bring others on board. And then, as the visionary, he wants somebody else to implement the results because he doesn't want to get caught in the weeds.
Yeah.
How does that sound, Jason? Did I just nail it?
Absolutely.
Spot on.
Because I have been, like, I can go in the weeds, right? If I need to, right? But I've kind of learned over time that's not probably the best way to be innovative and produce results, if that makes sense.
What it does is it actually worse. It sucks energy. It sucks life out of you because you are not naturally, right? That is not your natural style. So the fact that Jonathan is your number 2 and that he is much higher on details, precision, accuracy, not making a mistake, has a slower pace, right? And is more risk averse, is phenomenal for that kind of partnership to really work extremely effectively because your yin is his yang and you guys balance each other out so that you're not moving forward too quickly and making a rash decision and being too abrupt. but it's more thorough and more thought out. So, that's really, really key for the two of you working together. And you guys have a phenomenal, working relationship and respect for each other based on that, based on the differences, because you know that you absolutely have to have both. But see, this is the essence of having an appreciation, having an elevated understanding of not only your own style, but the style of all those people on your team. So I do this with executive teams all the time, and it's one of the most powerful things. See, traditional training is 87% of it is forgotten in 30 days.
Wow.
But because this is talking about you and learning about you, and we are self-centric by nature, people devour this information. They love learning more about themselves. And so it's retained. So anyway.
That's good. That's a good perspective. And as we're going back through this, really hadn't looked at it since you did the training with us. And it's a good reminder of how different we're all wired. And, to where I can find myself, I think we're all guilty of this, but when you start working with somebody or you're working on a project or things happen and you're working with somebody that's so different than you are. And, the first inclination can be to get frustrated because they're not getting it the way that you do, or they don't speak the same way that you do, kind of a thing. And to understand that they're wired differently, this is how they operate. And it's good self-reflection for me to remember that, like if I work with Jason or another team member of, all right, this is their strength. This is how they operate. This is what they're needing in this moment, instead of thinking, why can't they just communicate like I communicate? Why can't they just do this and that? And so it's again, eye-opening for me to reflect back on this.
So, I often say that leadership is more about finesse than it is about power. Finesse, by understanding your own predispositions and how you respond, right? And then understanding your followers and modifying and adjusting how you communicate to what it is that they value and how they want to be communicated with. So if we'll get to that in the strength plan, which kind of tells you specifically how to interact and communicate with each individual. But let's move on to values. A person's values dictate basically why they get up every morning and go to work. Okay, let's move to the economic, because the aesthetic really doesn't have that much practical value to business. Economic. So this really is what is it that brings you fulfillment? Why is it that you go to work? What is it that motivates and drives you? Okay. Now, I've said before, I think in the first podcast, this assessment, not the DISC, the third assessment, will tell us absolutely categorically if someone is a flight risk. If someone has one foot out the door and they're ready to leave the company, okay? In fact, I just did a training session with another group last week. We had 12 flight risks out of 38 people.
Whoa.
And I am starting to see an upward trend in the percentage of people that are coming back as flight risks. And I think there's a number of reasons for that. We won't get into all those today. One of them is that post-COVID, people have shifted their priorities in terms of how much work, right? The place and priority that work has in their life. And if they're not satisfied and happy where they are, they're going to leave. And so every single person, I did one-on-one sessions with every single person agreed with me that there was something in their life or work that was causing them to think about leaving the company. And by being able to be proactive and talk about that, we are able to resolve most of those situations because they're conflict averse and they want to sweep it on the rug. So I'll give you one quick example. I had a guy is like one of the most important executives at a $100 million company. And he's been with the company for 15 years. He's the most revered, respected leader in the company. And come to find out that after 15 years, the CEO was absolutely blown away that he would tell me, an absolute stranger, why he's thinking about leaving the company, and had never once indicated the reason that he's having a hard time and whether or not he can continue.
Wow.
But that's just the way it works, right? Also, I think I have probably a little bit of a trusting kind of empathetic kind of demeanor, so people feel comfortable with me. But that is hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars in lost opportunity cost, in intellectual capital that would leave the company. So anyway, that's another reason. That's the third assessment. But so economic here, one of the things I want to mention, that when we went through this as a team, your people played full out. They were very transparent. And MK, at the very last one, she has a high economic drive. So what we found in doing a global research study is that the top 10% of the best salespeople in the world have a high economic score. Actually, it's 80 out of 100. Her score is an 81. And what was very revealing to you guys is that someone like this is not going to be content or satisfied with just having a base salary. They need to have a hybrid compensation plan. So we discussed openly that this person not only has a high, desire for more money, but they also are one of the best in your company at working with existing customers and seeing opportunities of how to upsell, cross-sell, and vertically integrate or penetrate the account so that they purchase more of your services. And it was really awesome to see you guys acknowledge that this is a gift, a superpower of hers, and then to instantly basically make the decision, you're right. She's a valuable area. She's being underutilized. This is what she really values. Now we're going to create a compensation plan that gives her upside potential. Win-win all the way across the board. So that was something that was kind of the biggest aha from this motivator of economic.
It's definitely something to be aware of, right? Because think about it, like, how do you best position yourself as a company, right? You want to nurture your existing clientele and give them the best that you have. And sometimes they don't know, right? They're hiring you to almost be a leader, an authority, and tell them what they need to do, right? Yeah. And a lot of times where a lot of businesses mess up is the roles get reversed, and the organization ends up telling the company what to do, right? That's a bad place to be in. Then you're in a commodity boat, right? So when we went through this, I noticed that effort that they put in, and it wasn't frivolous upsells or they were very intentional things that the clients actually needed. And I was just like, wow, I wish I had 10 of them. Right.
Sure.
But anyway, yeah, you're right. That was just such a phenomenal result.
Takeaway.
John.
What a gift, right? To be able to know that she has, to be able to not only be a phenomenal account manager and do the work, but also to connect the dots and to add more value based on everything that you have to offer in your portfolio. Absolutely win-win. Let's go to the next one. Unless, Jonathan, you have a question?
Well, I was just going to say, John, you've worked at a lot of individuals, a lot of organizations. Do you see that characteristic as kind of for a salesperson? Is that something you see off the charts with the best salespeople?
Absolutely. I will tell you, almost every single time with hundreds and hundreds of organizations, the top 3 people in the company are a 99 out of 100 on economic motivation. They aren't even thinking about going to their boat at the harbor or bumping off early on a Friday at 12 o'clock. They are engaged in the game because they're so,
wow.
They're motivated by legacy and they measure themselves by how well they're doing against their numbers. You can't teach that, right? It's innate. Some people have that extra gear or two and others just don't. And, this is the frustration for most companies. They have all these interviews, one-dimensional interviews or group interviews, right? They look the part, they say the right things. And then after they're hired, you're like, Where's the person that was in the interview?
Where's that guy?
Been there. Yeah, you're
Right? You're like,
What happened?
why aren't you selling anything? You look
in
the
the
part,
what?
you say the right stuff, but you have no resilience. You have very little persistence, self-starting ability. You can't handle rejection. Guess what? You cannot train yourself out of a bad hire.
Get it
That
right.
is a huge lesson that people need. And here's something else. If someone has an innate weakness, don't try to send them to some type of program, coaching, or development to try to improve them. It just negatively reinforces what they're not good at, and they're not going to get any improvement. It's about finding out what their strengths are, what their superpowers are. Why don't we go to the next one?
Yeah, we'll go to the next one. That's so such good insight there, John, because in my background in corporate, I remember a lot of times it was all about making us like well balanced. And so if your strength was here and your weakness was down here, well, we'll just pull that up so that you're just good across the board. That was exactly at what you just said. Things I was weak at, I really don't want to focus on those. It brings up this negativity within myself. It makes me feel like a failure if I'm over here, like I'm just not naturally wired this way. I'm not really good at this. And it was almost like it was just putting, a knife in the wound, or salt in the wound for something that I'm already struggling with internally. And when the transition happened, and said, all right, this is where you shine. This is where you're a rock star. And we're going to put the effort and the energy to help you become your absolute best here. That was when things started changing for me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. So, Jonathan, the single biggest way to immediately annoy you, disengage you, and make you want to run for the hills is to stand over you, tell you what to do, when to do, and how to do it. Simply put, if people micromanage you, you're out.
Yeah. Spot on.
Out. Gone. Life is too short, right? And so you have an 88 out of 100. Now, as an employer, having someone that has a high score in this is like nirvana kind of thing, right? Because you like to work in a self-directed manner. You like to have the ability and the authority to make decisions. And you like to have autonomy and freedom in how you work and what you do. Now, with a new employee, you're going to start letting the rope out, because they need to understand the culture and everything about the company and what you do. But now that you've been with the company so long, you're like, in the zone, in your element. So Jason is very hands off with you, right? Yeah. So that is your number one motivator. What fulfills you the most is contributing and working in a self-directed manner and being trusted to do so. And then having freedom and autonomy. Right, as opposed to being told what to do, when, and how. So,
100%. And with that, in the past, I've had different employers, and because the way, let's take COVID as an example. You take everybody out of the workforce; they're working from home, and then some organizations are bringing them back. Some people want to work from home, and I've seen a lot of insecure leaders, and that are. Just insecurity. It runs rampant there. And I think with all of our employees, with all of our hires, we measure them based on KPIs and proper expectations that are set up front. And so if we know that somebody is running with these activities, and we know that, weekly or monthly or whenever they're going to get these things done, you measure based on those. And whether it takes somebody, because we're all wired differently, whether it takes somebody 30 minutes to do a task, an hour to do a task, 5 hours to do a task, or the project, is setting those clear expectations up front. And so what I ran up against with previous employers was the fact that, all right, if you're trusting me and you're measuring and I'm meeting these KPIs, but yet you're still standing over me, exactly what you said at the beginning, standing over me, micromanaging, am I getting it done? Where are you on this? It's like that's a great way to push me out the door. And so if somebody's not hitting the mark and they're not meeting their KPIs, have a conversation about it, see where the struggle is, see where the problem is, but you just stand over them, that's a way to kill me, easily, just like you said.
So from an onboarding point of view for a new hire, I just read something in the last week that said that if you are very clear and specific about the roles and responsibilities of the new hire, they are 18 times more committed.
Wow.
Conversely, they are, if they don't have that, they are the most likely and the highest propensity to leave within the first 3 months. 3 months.
Wow.
So they took a look at people that left within 6 months and a year. They said, okay, if you're not clear on what's expected, their roles and responsibilities and what they're supposed to do, they're pretty much, not only are they, 18 times less committed to the company because you haven't given them clear guidance, they're going to leave within the first 3 months. So, this is also a very powerful onboarding tool because you just, like you said, you read the person's mail for the first time in their career and their life. They've had somebody tell them more information about them than they know about them. And they're like, wow. And now you're like joined at the hip. You're like connected on an emotional capacity. You know their communication style. You know what they're driven and motivated by and what lights them up. And you know what their talents are. So it's an absolute game changer. I had a sales vice president evaluate his entire team. No, I'm sorry. I evaluated three people to start. His highest performer, his lowest performer, and his average performer. Not only did I tell him who was who, but he said to me after I gave him back all the data, he said, John, I've never experienced anything like this in my entire life. You have told me more about my people than I know about them after working with them day in and day out for 4 years. That's how substantial it is. But anyway, let's move on to the next one.
And John, just to piggyback on that, I've talked with a lot of organizations over the last few years, especially since the C word happened, right? It is undeniable with the amount of turnover. And I'm talking from manufacturing, from B2C to every organization. Like the turnover rate, you're right. It's like month over month, right? It's like they've been here for 3 months. They've been here for 3 weeks, and some orgs, same position in a year, 3 different people.
Yeah. And
I'm just astounded. You're right. There's no brand loyalty, right? There's, it's like, you're right. It's, we came in this shift where it's like everybody needed talent and they all had the power, right?
Right.
Now there's a shift to where I've got so many resumes, I could build 3, staffing firms, right? And the people and the companies that are out there hiring, these headhunters, they're not picking from that pool, right? I've had more resumes in the past 6 months than I probably had in the last 5 years. Mind blowing, right? So you've got this pool, but then you've got all the top headhunters. They're not going after them. They're going after the people that have a position because they realize that that company's doing everything they can to retain that person because they're valuable. So why pick out of this pool when we can pick out of this pool, right? And I think that's important for companies to understand. This is where the brand comes in, the culture, right? The brand culture, the marketing, the self-aware brand, right? And that's why it's so important to conduct these self-assessment tests, right? To be able to retain these people because you're the talent genius, right, John?
Yep.
So you're also identifying the talent that they have, the talent they don't want to lose and why. Like this is a game changer for organizations.
Yep. No question about
man,
it.
Just mind blowing.
It is. Harvard Business Review said that almost half of new hires are no longer with a company after 18 months. Almost half. Think of the massive disruption and the cost associated with that. That's in Harvard Business Review. They also found that if an organization improves their hiring by just 25%, they will double their company's results with the same payroll. Double. With the same payroll. 25%. That's a walk in the park. We typically triple to quadruple all day, every day. So Yeah, it's the other dynamic that's really frightening is we know from some research from DDI that 57% of the reason why an employee leaves is because of their immediate manager or leader, right? So that whole adage about people don't leave companies, they leave leaders, right? It's absolutely true. But here's what's scary for almost every organization based on research. Frontline leaders, 70% of people who are promoted to leadership say they weren't expecting the promotion. And while 20% of the people that were promoted were excited about the prospect of being in a leadership role, 17% took it because they thought it was the next step. 19% took it just for the pay raise. 18% regret taking the position. And here's the real kicker. Listen to this one. 41% doubt of whether or not it was the right move. Almost half of people that are promoted into a leadership position have doubts that they made the right decision. And therefore, what is the experience of the followers, of the people that they're managing and leading day in and day out going to be? I'm going to tell you, not too good. Right? Yeah. That is scary. Now, one of the things that this assessment will do, I've saved companies hundreds of millions of dollars. In fact, just did this last week with one of my clients where they're comparing internal candidates to external candidates. They want to try to promote from within, but they want to make sure that they have the right leadership DNA. Well, in 2 instances, we had some very capable, competent, very good employees, but there was one score that was an immediate showstopper, immediate knockout punch. And that is this: accountability for others. Accountability for others. What that means is if you have a low score, you do not feel comfortable and do not want to take responsibility for the results of other people when you have no control over their work ethic or the quality of their productivity. It's over. It's like the huge red flag. So, regrettably, although their preference is to hire and to promote from within, they had to, in a couple of instances, recruit and hire people from the outside who had a high accountability for others, who actually are passionate and love, intrinsically rewarded and fulfilled by helping people take them to the next level and being the person that is the leader. Now, this directly ties into this next statistic here, this next variable. This has to do with how much someone wants to be out front and center leading the charge. And again, the average score of the top 10% of the best leaders in the world and salespeople is a 60 out of 100. It's extremely common, very rare that a CEO, an entrepreneur, a senior executive has a score lower than 60 because they love to be in a position of influence. They love the visibility that comes with it. They want to be leading the charge. Okay. So Jason, your score is a 63. Jonathan, your score is a 50. Now take a look at JS. I remember this as if it was yesterday, even though we did this in December. When I told this person, you want to fly under the radar and not be seen or heard and basically just get your work done. And to you, that's the best case situation. And she said, absolutely. That is totally, you remember it, right? Yeah. It's just like, you just nailed it, right? So again, this is an important characteristic for leadership and for sales. You have to have a moderate to high score in this for both. All right, let's go to the next one. It's called altruistic. This has to do with how much you genuinely desire to help other people. Now, there's no right or wrong here, gentlemen. Jonathan's, gasping because it's now been revealed.
Remember this? You remember this? I was like, I hate people.
He is so selfish.
Right?
It's like
when you compare all 7 variables, this is your lowest. There's no right or wrong to this. It's just what is, right? You're motivated by other things.
family.
so,
You remember that?
yeah. Yep. Absolutely. So let's go to the next one.
I'm glad we stopped there to call me out.
Right.
See, we're being honest and real here.
Hey,
We're
man,
opening the book.
I've been getting called out all episode. Oh,
Now, not only does my next comment apply to your organization, it also applies to a company that I just finished working with Tuesday and Wednesday of last week, where it was perceived that a new employee would be thrilled and overjoyed with the fact that they were responsible for writing their own job description. They had total freedom and flexibility to kind of, put all the details together of, what they think, would be the ideal job position. What we came to find out in both circumstances was that because they had a high regulatory score, which means they have an incredibly high value for structure, for systems, for policies, for procedures, and they basically want to have rules. If they don't have that, there's no way of them measuring how well am I doing. So it makes them incredibly uneasy. They have no way to know if they're doing a good job. And it will lead to the person leaving. So sometimes entrepreneurs think that, hey, this is, you can go ahead and create your own job. But if they're high regulatory, it's the absolute worst thing for them because they have no guide rails to know if they're doing a good job or not, or if they're spending their time in the right area. They're lost. And not only that, they're not getting, if they don't get any feedback, in terms of how they're doing, it's a train wreck. So again, different people value different things, and you have to make sure that you understand what they value in order to kind of customize, right, and personalize something that is going to be cherished and really valued by that person. It's specific, right? So that's what I just wanted to mention in that. And I think that was a pretty huge, another huge takeaway for both of you with one specific individual.
I think that's huge, right? Because you tend to think that giving someone a lot of freedom is kind of always the best solution, right?
Right.
If they're a natural go-getter, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when you said that it makes sense that they need benchmarks to measure themselves, that's when it truly resonated with me.
Absolutely.
I was like, oh man, aha, because my personal KPIs are way different than Jay Hill's, right? It could be way different than this person, this person, this person. And, just switching your mindset and having that empathy, they need a little bit of structure. They need this so they can create their own value, right?
Yeah. And when you provide that type of structure, then what we know from research is that highly engaged employees are 87% less likely to voluntarily resign from their position. 87% less likely when they are highly engaged, because that's what fulfills them. That's what gives them a sense of self-satisfaction and intrinsic reward. When you think about it, it's not rocket science. We spend the best waking hours of our day at the job. And if we're not enjoying that, we're bringing it, home, unfortunately, to our loved ones, and they pay the penalty as well. So anyway, let's go on to the last one, which is theoretical. This is a love of learning. How much do you love learning? And so you have, again, a diversity of scores. The main thing is that, MK and SW would be the last people that could ever work on an assembly line doing the same mundane, repetitive thing every day, every week, every month, every year. It would just, there's no way they can handle that. Their intellectual curiosity is too high. It's too broad. All right. So we have talked about behavior and how that your personality style, your traits impacts how you communicate with one another. And we've also talked about what you value or why you get up and go to work every day, what motivates and drives you. The third and final and most important aspect of this the trifecta is the talents, innate talents. What do you bring to the table? Not skills, not experience. What do you naturally do well? What are your superpowers? So if we could go to that chart.
Yep. I'm going to pull up Jason.
Is that what we're going to? Okay.
You talking about this?
Yeah, let's just summarize his. Go scroll up just a little bit. So just to review his motivators, his top 3 motivators: the ability to make decisions and have freedom and autonomy, which is classic for an entrepreneur; strong achievement drive and a desire to be a leader and be out front and center, leading the charge; and a genuine desire to help other people. A wonderful blend for a entrepreneur. Now, next is how well do you connect and develop trust and rapport on an emotional level? He's in the top 0.1%. Outstanding. So
that's impressive.
So let's look at this. He has all 3 scores or assessments are all exceptional. He's friendly, outgoing, and social, extroverted, has a genuine desire intrinsically to help other people, and innately the talent of being able to connect and develop trust and rapport is in the top 0.1%. That's huge. Okay. This next is terms of his ability to get results and get things done and bring things to completion. If this is a low score, it's an immediate knockout punch for any position. What that means is they can start something, but they have no power to finish and push through.
And what would you say is a low score, John?
I would say anything that would be under 6. But I would say that is settling. I would look for a score that would be in the top 10%. If I'm an employer or building my own firm team, I'm looking for people that are in the top 10%. I'm not going to settle. It's too important.
Yeah.
Too directly linked to a person's productivity, performance. I saw something the other day that showed the difference in profit of an A player, a B player, an average player, and a C player. The A player was like $350,000, right? It was like an extra $150,000 per employee when you have an A player. So you can't afford to compromise. And then problem solving was in the top 5%. So I guess both of you guys were quite surprised that you guys are almost clones in this third area. Your scores are almost identical. So the summary then for Jason is: my superpower and biggest reason for your success, past, present, and future, is your ability to connect, relate, build trust and rapport quickly and easily. Jason, yes or yes?
I would assume that's correct.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then in addition, this is coupled with being friendly, social, and outgoing personality and having a genuine desire to help others, which is your motivation. Being strong in all 3 dimensions of those areas has an amplification effect and makes you that much better with people. And then here's the key. Only 9% of the world's population have talent scores in all 3 dimensions that are either in the top 10% or better. So imagine cherry picking the top 10, 15, or 20% of the most talented people and just loading up your company with just that as intentional. Before you even meet them, they have the innate talent to do the job.
That's a tough lesson, right? Because when you truly want to help people and give back, you tend to want to really have a lot of empathy and mold people and give people, that ability to grow in certain areas, right?
Right.
And I think we talked about this during the first podcast. I'm like, what do you do when you go into an org and say they have 20 or 30 people that are in that lower tier? Do you just keep trying and just settle? Or do you just say, hey, we just need to find new people? Right. And that goes against a lot of companies, right? Because They'll have people, they'll develop relationships on a personal, right? On a personal relationship level. And they really want to do what's best for them, help them grow, right? And take their superpower and amplify it. Get them on the right seat of the bus. In some cases, I can see where that can work out. But in some cases, you almost just got to cut your losses.
That's exactly right.
And say, hey, let's find a new one. It may cost a little bit right now, but you're going to save millions in the long run, right?
I'll never forget a client up in Anchorage, Alaska, which is a very transient workforce. He lost all three of his key administrators at the same time. And he was like, oh my gosh, the sky is falling. What am I going to do? Right? So what was very interesting is that he didn't realize until those three people were gone how much he was settling, because the three people that we helped him hire were so significantly better. It was like, I could have had why did I limp along and go through the stress, right? And not having total peace of mind so long with these three people who were just mediocre. And now I have three rock stars. Massive, massive difference. So yeah, it's definitely a game changer. When you take a look, let's take a look at sales for just a second. 20% of the salespeople at almost every company globally consistently sell 80% of the total sales revenue. So imagine if an organization had the vision and were progressive to think, okay, let's take just 20%, or let's just take 10% of the 80%, right? That are only doing 20% of the business, just 10%, and have them be comparable in terms of their performance to the top 20%. Just think of the numbers there, gentlemen.
Yeah, it's pretty ridiculous.
You're doing a favor to the people. They know they're not very good at it. They know they're never going to be very good at it. You know that's the case. You can't train them to be effective because we really haven't spent a whole lot of time on the talents. But it's things like that includes things, the intangibles, the most important criteria for hiring that you can't see in an interview: persistence, drive, initiative, self-starting ability, the ability to problem solve, right? The ability to handle rejection, resilience, self-confidence, self-worth. I mean, and countless others that we measure. If you don't have those things, you're never going to have them. And that's why the vast majority of all training falls flat.
John, do you have any organizations that run these assessments before the hire? And so bring people in for an interview, and this is the interview?
Absolutely. Almost every single one of my clients uses this as a pre-screening tool.
Yeah.
Before they agree to even meet with a person. That's the bulk of my business. See, I used to be in the training and development industry. And then I woke up based on personal firsthand experience that it doesn't work.
That's a clip. That's a clip in the song.
I'm telling you, after the training, the high performers continue to be high performers, and the low performers there's no direct causal link between the training and an increase in sales. So when I was working for the company that founded skills-based sales training in the 60s, right? This was the 800-pound gorilla, trusted by 427% of the Fortune 500 at one point in time, because it was considered to be the best and least risk vendor. And people that are making decisions don't want to get fired. So, they decide to go with it. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. And so what happens in an economic downturn, these executives know that. And it's one of the very first things in their line item that gets nixed, and appropriately so. If it worked, they would do double and triple the amount of training of this sales training, but it doesn't. So they're still stuck with the same thing. 20% of the salespeople continue to do 80% of the total volume, and they can't crack the code as to what it is that makes Sharon or John or Rodney, right, the top 20%. And they're just guessing. So
Wow.
yeah, the opportunity, the cost of holding on to mediocre performers. Like again, every organization has 80% of their salespeople only contributing 20% of the total sales revenue, and
That's a big business. That's a huge business in itself. Training, right, and coaching, and especially when it comes to performance and sales and marketing. So that's a tough pill to swallow, right? A lot of people, they're not accustomed to hearing that, John, and I think that's why the adoption is sometimes just a little difficult, right?
yeah. But when I confront people or be brutally honest and transparent with what I call truth, it resonates, it connects, they get it, right? Because 99% of the people that you put on a performance improvement plan don't make it. They can't. You're asking them to do something that their brain is incapable of doing. And so, they understand from their own personal real life experience the validity and accuracy of what I'm telling them. It's just they've never known the answer or know that there's something out there that can actually resolve this issue. So, back, it was, I think, almost 20 years ago, I saw a quote in Harvard Business Review, and it says this: accept that people cannot demonstrate leadership or sales qualities that they don't innately possess, regardless of how urgent the business need is. That's powerful, right?
Very powerful.
Accept that people cannot demonstrate leadership or sales qualities they don't innately possess, even if the business situation urgently demands it.
Wow.
And so, the upside potential, the opportunity is enormous. It's just that most people just don't realize that this technology exists. And here's the kicker: it's over 4 decades old. It's one of the most vetted, statistically validated, with all, races, geographies, doesn't matter whether you're talking about Brazil, Colombia, Italy, China, Germany, it's irrelevant, right? People are people.
Yeah.
And I love how the differences, in personality, you discover that. And at first you're just like, wow, this, I don't get it. But in the end, you see like Jay Hill, for example, like we have a lot of different aspects. And, we went through my results, my strength plan. But then as you look at Jay Hill's strength plan, then ours are pretty much the same. So,
as far as your talents are concerned, yes, your motivators are different, and so is your communication or personality style. So if you're going to be in the top, the ideal situation is for all of your talents to be in the top 10%. That's very rare. So, there's no surprise that in terms of the positions that you're in and how well you're doing. But to have contrast in communication style, in personality style, in threshold for risk, how much you're detailed, thorough, and, all those types of things is very important. So, when I work with executive leadership teams, the penny starts to drop that everybody is needed, that diversity of style and what they're motivated by is all a holistic, right? You can't like Jonathan said about having everybody that's a high D. You're just going to be, everybody's going to be combative and trying to get, their way. So, that balance is definitely needed. And it needs to be intentional, candidly. Oftentimes it's just, we hire a person and we don't take into consideration how they're going to fit into the rest of the team and whether or not they're going to be complementary. And if so, how, and what the value they're going to add. This takes all of that, guesswork out of the picture. So
John, you're so good at what you do, and I personally, I just think every organization needs to connect with this. They need to become the self-aware brand, right? I think
Yeah.
it is self-awareness is just such a strong piece of the puzzle. So just let us know, let the listeners know how they can get access to you, to the talent genius. And
Sure. So thank you. So, nothing ultimately becomes real until you have a personal experience with something. We can talk about all the case studies, return on investments, talk about the value but someone really doesn't get it until they take it themselves. So, if you want to test drive this for free, I'll allow you the opportunity to do so. The single best way to do this is because the contrast is so significant and the easiest to prove. If you have a sales team and you want to give me your number one best salesperson, and then give me someone who is struggling, someone that's, one of your poorest sales performers, have them both take the assessment. Don't tell me who's high and who's low. I will tell you with 100% accuracy, not only who the top performer and who the low performer is, I'll tell you why the top performer will continue to be a top performer and what it is that they possess that the low performer will never possess and why the low performer will always be a low performer. I have never been wrong. The science is so precise. If you're a executive and I also encourage if you're an executive or business owner, go ahead and take it yourself as well. I'll review the information with you and then you'll know that this thing is the real deal because you've got the results and I interpret the data for you. And out of the hundreds of thousands of people that have taken this, the average reliability or accuracy factor is 90%. People tell me all day, every day, this is 90%. Nothing's ever going to be 100%, right? But they say consistently, this is who I am. Like you guys said, this read my mail, right? So if you want to do that, you can go to mentormejohn.com. It's not my primary website, but it's a website that will allow you to schedule a call and to learn a little bit more about, what we do. And again, it's mentormejohn.com.
Awesome. And we will drop that in the show notes as well for anybody that's listening and watching. Just click on that link, take you straight there to Mentor Me John, schedule that consult. Cannot encourage you enough. If you did not hear the first episode we had with John, that's in the show notes as well. Go back and listen to that. He'll give you a lot of statistics and data today, going through me and Jason personally and the rest of the team, but he really breaks it down into the self-assessment, the self-awareness, and how critical it is. So listen to that first if you haven't. But John, we want to thank you for coming on twice with us, for coming down, meeting with the team, helping us and just helping us be more self-aware individually as well as collectively as a team. This is just extremely valuable information. And so thank you for everything you shared with us and our listeners.
My pleasure. And let me reciprocate. It's not very often that I meet entrepreneurs that are at the top of their game. And so if you are not a client of Talent Alexander and you need marketing help in any form or fashion, you need to contact these gentlemen. You need to stop sitting on the sidelines. All right. Because I've just reviewed all of their data, all of their innate talents, the exceptional people that these people truly are. And, the transformation that you need from a branding and from a marketing point of view is just around the corner. Heck, we all know the single most challenging, difficult thing is to find capable partners who are legit, that walk the talk, that deliver return on investment, and that have a stellar reputation in the marketplace. It's the exception. I don't recommend very many companies because of that. But I strongly encourage you, right? These guys are doing a valuable service by bringing in guests and giving you great content. Marketing is one of the Achilles heels of almost every single company. It's elusive to most people. Take all the question mark, take all the doubt out of the critical function of marketing and contact either Jonathan or Jason. We didn't talk about this. I just feel compelled to say it because of the experience that I've had with them and because of meeting with not just them, but their entire team and the capabilities that they bring to the market.
Wow. And this was not a paid sponsorship, just fully transparent. Thank you so much.
Only off the cuff, but genuine and authentic because
oh, wow.
I met with you guys and know you guys. So, you know, it's like, it's one of the biggest challenges. All my clients, they have so many different partners, vendors that are providing different services, and it's so disruptive. It's so costly. It's very, very difficult to find great people, as you know, not just as employees, but great companies that offer a very compelling, right, solution and services to the market. So.
Well, thank you for those words. It's very kind of you, John. We appreciate that. And, like I said, we just appreciate the giving us just a little glimpse, a little taste of everything that you share and uncover for individuals and organizations. And so, hey, guys, stay tuned. There could be a part 3 with John Pyke. We don't know yet. We know that we're just slowly tapping the well and digging deep here. But we just want to thank you for tuning in. Thank you to John. And until next time, we'll see you soon. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening and joining us on the Love Your Brand podcast. Stay tuned for the next episode, and remember, share the love.